Hey coaches, this episode is about practice, and no better coach to learn about practice from than one of the most winningest high school basketball coaches in United States history, Bob Hurley. Bob Hurley is a coach that most people are aware of. He's a coach that does clinics all over the country, and he's a coach that's won dozens of state championships in the state of New Jersey at St. Anthony's High School. Unfortunately, St. Anthony's High School has since closed, and Coach Hurley has stepped down from coaching. But we can still learn valuable lessons from him. And so today I'm going to present 11 practice essentials that Coach Hurley talks about when planning practice. Number one practice essential, Coach Hurley talks about putting a plan down on paper. Not going into practice just winging it, not going into practice just seeing how he feels, having a plan, sticking to it, putting thought into it, and making sure to be organized. He also talks about keeping his practice plans from year to year, keeping notes about what worked and what didn't, and then learning from his mistakes. And he emphasizes to really stick to your plan and don't deviate too much during practice. Second, Hurley talks about the importance of alternating hard drills with easy drills. He says that hard drills should not last longer than 5 to 10 minutes and that they should be alternated with easy drills. This makes total sense to me. It's hard to keep up player concentration if you have multiple difficult, strenuous drills in a row. Makes sense. It works. It makes sense to alternate hard drills with easy drills. Third, Hurley talks about practicing the way you play, meaning structure your practice to the style or tempo that you want to play. At St. Anthony's, Hurley talks about trying to do as much full court stuff as possible because they are an up-tempo team. If you have a team that is more of a half-court style, obviously you don't want to ignore transition, but maybe keeping practice in that format would work better. Fourth, Hurley talks about skill development in that he devotes 2/3 of his practice to individual drills and 1/3 of practice to team stuff. He feels that the individual drills will make your team play that much better, and they can't be ignored. Even though as coaches we sometimes get excited about our offense or our new scheme, he recommends against that. Fifth, Hurley suggests to focus on your team's goals and your team's development rather than focusing on upcoming opponents. He feels that when you focus on upcoming opponents, players can sense whether it's a stronger opponent or weaker opponent, and their attitudes and their effort might play into that. So he recommends making sure that you focus on your team, and that way the players will most likely be ready to go for the next opponent. 6, Hurley recommends breakdown drills by position on a daily basis. He recommends having one assistant work with the inside guys and one assistant working with the guards, and then the head coach can float back and forth. This is something probably most college programs do to start their practices, but Hurley does that with his high school program as well. 7, Hurley says you can't forget about shooting. He says that no matter what, you should do at least 20 minutes of shooting per day. Now that doesn't mean doing the same drills. It's important to mix it up, but he says that if you forget about the shooting aspect of practice and aren't constantly working on that, nothing else in your offense is going to really matter if your guys can't put the ball in the basket. 8, Hurley, I've heard him talk numerous times at different clinics about shortening practice as the season goes on. It's important to save players' legs as the season wears on. Of course, and near the end of the season, you want to get ready for big games at the end of the season. You want to get ready for playoffs, but he emphasizes the importance of shortening practice at the end and keeping the players interested and making sure they're fresh for the next game. 9, Hurley talks about the importance of coaching special situations. By special situations, he means putting 2 minutes on the clock or putting 1 minute on the clock, having a score set, having a foul count set, and putting the players in practice through those situations so they're ready for them in the games. It works on player intelligence. It works on player IQ. It helps players get ready for those moments in games where they have to adjust to different situations. One interesting thing he talks about that kind of goes against one of his other principles of having 2/3 of your practice about skill development is he says he has one practice every 2 weeks or so where he just does special situations with his team. They'll do 15, 20 different situations, and he'll just have his teams go through all those situations so that they're prepared. The 10th practice essential Hurley talks about is the practice before games and the practice after games to make sure that those practices are a bit lighter and shortened. He believes that if you go too hard the day before a game, it can take the players' legs away on game day, especially the guys who are going to play a lot of minutes, and it could cost you in the game. And then also the day after the game, with recovery, Hurley emphasizes to also shorten practice on the day after a game, even though it might be tempting, especially after tough losses, to really go hard. But he talks about having to have the discipline to not do that and shorten practice so that players can recover. 11, Hurley starts and ends every practice with a meeting. He says it's important to check in with players. It's important to set the tone with players. It's important to be positive in these short meetings. And it's also important to recognize players who have done things that uphold your culture. It's important to recognize players who might not play very much but are supporting the cause in practice. So it's important to have these meetings to start and end practice, and then end on a positive note. End on something positive that the players can walk away and feel good about practice. Even if it wasn't the best practice, he talks about ending on a positive note. So that's Bob Hurley's 11 practice essentials. I think these are great recommendations for coaches, not at only the high school level, but any level. I think these are great recommendations to get your team best prepared to play, and I hope you found them useful.